Welcome to a journey beyond the known, where reality meets the extraordinary. In this corner of the universe, we will explore artifacts that defy logic, places that whisper forgotten secrets, and mysteries hidden in the depths of the seas, in the shadows of ancient caves, and even in the vast sky. Get ready to open your mind and be carried away by the unknown. Are you ready to cross the threshold? The adventure begins now. Close your ire and follow me. The lost city of Mohenjo-Daro, the mystery of a forgotten civilization. Amid the dusty plains of present-day Pakistan, on the dry bed of the Indus River, lies a city whose ruins barely whisper echoes of a once great past. Its name, Mohenjo-Daro, literally means Mound of the Dead, a somber title for one of the most advanced metropolises of the ancient world, whose secrets, despite the efforts of generations of archaeologists and historians, continue to elude our full understanding. Mohenjo-Daro was no ordinary settlement. When it was discovered in the 1920s by British and European archaeologists, what they found radically changed the perception of ancient civilizations in Asia. Here, during the Bronze Age, there existed a city that, in many ways, rivaled the sophistication of the most celebrated cities of Egypt or Mesopotamia. Its streets, straight and carefully planned, were laid out in a grid system that seems more fitting for modern urban planning than for a culture over 4,000 years old. Each block of houses was neatly organized by main streets and smaller alleys, a design intended to maximize ventilation and facilitate the movement of people and goods through an orderly, functional city environment. Even more astonishing was its sewer system, considered one of the most advanced of the ancient world. Underground channels made of baked clay and stone carried wastewater away from inhabited areas, and many houses featured private bathrooms directly connected to these drainage lines. A convenience that other civilizations would not achieve for many centuries. The houses varied in size and complexity, but all demonstrated a level of attention to detail that suggests a society concerned with the well-being of its citizens. The larger homes had multiple rooms arranged around interior courtyards, with private water wells and storage areas for grain and domestic goods. At the heart of the city stood the citadel, an elevated structure built atop a reinforced mound of earth, where the most important buildings were located, including the famous Great Bath. This large rectangular tank, lined with waterproof bricks and fed by a sophisticated system of cisterns and drains, may have served for ritual purification ceremonies, although its exact purpose remains a subject of debate. Despite its evident sophistication, it is surprising that no monumental temples or royal palaces have been found in Mohenjo-Daro, unlike other contemporary civilizations. Nor are there clear signs of a dominant ruling class or significant social differences reflected in the architecture of the homes. This absence of ostentatious structures has led some experts to suggest that the Indus Valley civilization may have been remarkably egalitarian compared to others of its time, though, of course, this interpretation remains speculative. Commerce flourished in Mohenjo-Daro. Seals engraved with animal figures and symbols, still undeciphered, have been found, likely used as marks of ownership or transaction records. These artifacts show that the inhabitants engaged in trade with distant regions, including ancient Mesopotamia. The discovered artifacts, which include terracotta figurines, bronze tools, jewelry made of semi-precious stones, and finely crafted pottery, reveal an artistic and technical level that speaks of specialized artisans and a culture with refined tastes. Yet, for every obvious advancement, there is an even more baffling absence. A fully understood writing system has not been found. Although there are brief inscriptions on seals and objects, the Indus script remains undeciphered, leaving a vast gap in our understanding of their language, thoughts, and history. But perhaps the greatest mystery of Mohenjo-Daro does not lie in its past splendor, but in its sudden abandonment. Around 1900 BCE, the city began to decline and was eventually abandoned, with no evidence of violent invasion or destruction by war. The disappearance of Mohenjo-Daro happened progressively yet irreversibly, leaving behind silent ruins that even today defy definitive explanations. Theories about its fall are varied. Some suggest that changes in the course of the Indus River, vital for irrigation and agriculture, led to water scarcity and economic collapse. Others believe that natural disasters, such as earthquakes or severe climate changes, may have made life in the city unsustainable. There are also more controversial hypotheses that speak of epidemic diseases or even internal conflicts that fragmented the social structure. One particularly popular theory among mystery enthusiasts proposes that the city was destroyed by a high-energy explosion, based on reports of vitrified materials found in some areas. However, serious archaeologists consider that these interpretations lack sufficient evidence. What is certain is that Mohenjo-Daro fell into oblivion, and for more than 3,000 years, sand and dust hid its secrets. Today, the site is threatened by erosion, seasonal flooding, and deterioration caused by uncontrolled tourism. Efforts to preserve it are ongoing, but the fragility of the ruins is a constant reminder of how fleeting even the most impressive achievements of a civilization can be. Walking among the remains of Mohenjo-Daro is a haunting experience. The empty streets, the crumbling houses, the stones cracked by time. Everything seems to whisper a story that refuses to be forgotten, even though its true meaning is lost among the mists of the past. Mohenjo-Daro teaches us that technological advancement and social order do not guarantee immortality. Even the brightest societies can fall into silence and vanish, leaving only fragments of their existence to be rediscovered centuries later. A reminder that every civilization, no matter how advanced, is merely a brief chapter in the long history of humanity. The mystery of the Nazca lines, drawings that defy time. Amid the Peruvian desert, under a relentless sun, and across a vast expanse of parched earth, rest figures that, despite their colossal size and impressive age, remained hidden from human eyes for centuries. These are the famous Nazca lines, one of humanity's most enigmatic cultural legacies. A mystery that, even after decades of study and exploration, continues to fascinate and puzzle archaeologists, historians, and dreamers alike. The modern discovery of the lines occurred in the 1920s, when passengers on commercial flights over the desert noticed strange patterns that appeared like scars etched into the ground. Until then, for those walking across the terrain, the lines were little more than indistinguishable paths in the endless monotony of the desert landscape. The astonishment was immediate. Dozens, then hundreds of geometric figures, kilometers-long straight lines, spirals, trapezoids, triangles, and, most famously, animal, plant, and human figures, all spread across a vast area of more than 500 square kilometers. How could a pre-Columbian culture, without access to flight or modern technology, design and execute such monumental works of art, visible only from the sky? The lines were created by the Nazca culture, a people who flourished between the 1st and 7th centuries of our era. Using a surprisingly simple yet effective technique, they removed the dark stones from the desert surface, exposing the lighter-colored soil beneath. Thanks to the extremely dry climate and the near-total absence of wind in the region, these drawings have remained almost perfectly preserved for nearly 2 millennia. However, the method of creation is only a small part of the mystery. The real question that has fascinated generations of researchers and curious minds alike is, why? Numerous theories have emerged over time. One of the earliest assumptions was that the lines served as ceremonial paths, routes for ritual processions dedicated to the gods. Some researchers believe that the animal and plant figures were sacred symbols, each associated with specific deities or natural phenomena that the ancient desert dwellers revered. Another theory suggests that the lines were part of a complex astronomical system. Archaeologist Maria Reich, who devoted her life to studying the Nazca lines, argued that many of the lines marked the positions of celestial bodies like the sun, the moon, or specific constellations, functioning as a giant land-based calendar. According to this interpretation, the figures could have been used to predict crucial climatic events, such as the start of the rainy season, essential for survival in such an extremely arid environment. However, more recent studies have raised doubts about the astronomical precision of the lines. While some alignments do seem to correspond with solar or stellar phenomena, many others show no clear connection to the sky. Another fascinating hypothesis proposes that the Nazca lines were part of a vast ritual system related to water, the most precious resource in the desert. According to this idea, the drawings and pathways could have been created to invoke rain or to honor the deities controlling underground aquifers and natural springs. Some researchers even suggest that certain spiral and zigzag designs could represent invisible underground water currents, revealing a surprising empirical knowledge of the region's hydrology. Beyond these more conventional interpretations, the mystery of the Nazca lines has inspired far more adventurous theories. Some speculative authors have proposed that the geoglyphs were made as signals for extraterrestrial visitors, landing strips, or cosmic messages carved into the earth. Although such ideas captivate popular imagination, they lack solid scientific evidence and are generally regarded by experts as entertaining fiction. Regardless of their true function, the technical execution of the lines is impressive. The Nazca people, with the simplest of tools, achieved a level of precision that continues to amaze even today. Some figures, such as the hummingbird, the monkey, or the albatross, exhibit harmonious proportions and fine detail, all on an enormous scale. How was it possible to create such works of art without an aerial perspective? Studies suggest that the builders used basic surveying techniques, wooden stakes, ropes, and rudimentary but effective measurement tools, combined with an exceptional mastery of geometry. Even more remarkable is that any mistake made in creating the lines would have been almost impossible to correct without leaving visible traces, demonstrating careful planning and extraordinary precision. Over the years, research into the lines has intensified. Thanks to satellite imagery, drones, and modern mapping technologies, many more geoglyphs have been discovered, previously hidden under layers of dust or eroded by time. Each new discovery adds pieces to a puzzle that, rather than solving itself, seems to grow ever more complex. Recent studies suggest that the lines were not created in a single period but rather reflect generations of drawings over centuries, mirroring cultural and religious changes. This could explain the great stylistic diversity, the varying sizes, and the seemingly different purposes among the various figures. Meanwhile, the Nazca lines today face threats their creators could never have imagined. Urban expansion, illegal mining, vandalism, and the effects of climate change pose serious risks to their preservation. Despite ongoing efforts to protect them, safeguarding these ancient traces across such a fragile landscape remains a formidable challenge. Walking across the Nazca Desert, between the lines, feeling the intense heat and staring at the infinite horizon, offers a near-mystical experience. It feels like listening to an ancient language of which we understand only fragments, as if the earth itself were whispering forgotten secrets. The Nazca lines are more than mere drawings on sand. They are a testament to human creativity, an act of faith, and an enduring symbol of the human desire to connect with something greater. A silent legacy that still today invites us to look up to the sky, and perhaps also to look within ourselves. The lost technology of the Egyptian pyramids, the secret of their construction. In the vast sands of the Egyptian desert, under the shadow of structures so colossal that they defy all human logic, the pyramids of Giza stand as silent witnesses to a time that continues to fascinate and puzzle the modern world. Among them, the Great Pyramid of Khufu stands out not only for its monumental size but also for the profound mystery that shrouds its construction. A mystery that, even after centuries of study, exploration, and countless theories, has yet to yield a definitive answer. The magnitude of this achievement is difficult to fully grasp. Over 2 million limestone blocks, some weighing between 2 and 70 tons, were quarried, transported, and precisely placed with an accuracy that would challenge even the most advanced engineering teams today. The Great Pyramid, originally standing more than 140 meters tall and built on an almost perfectly squared base, deviates from true north by a margin so tiny it is hard to comprehend, a level of alignment that many modern structures fail to achieve even with the help of satellite technology. For generations, it has been assumed that thousands of workers, guided by visionary architects and driven by the divine authority of a god-king, dedicated decades of relentless labor to erect this monument. Theories have been proposed involving massive sand ramps, primitive pulley systems, and sheer human determination. Yet each of these ideas faces challenges that are difficult to reconcile with the facts. The frontal ramp theory, for instance, suggests that an enormous earthen ramp spiraled around the pyramid as it rose. But for such a ramp to reach the upper levels, it would have required a volume greater than that of the pyramid itself, a notion that appears impractical and even absurd when considered carefully. Other researchers have suggested the existence of internal ramps, hidden within the body of the pyramid itself, a fascinating idea that has gained popularity in recent times, especially after the discovery of thermal anomalies and hidden cavities within the Great Pyramid through muon tomography. However, these theories, intriguing as they are, still lack direct archaeological evidence. Even more astonishing is the precision with which the stones were placed. The joints between some blocks are so tight that not even a sheet of paper can fit between them, an achievement that, considering the size and weight of the stones, borders on the miraculous. The leveling of the pyramid's base is equally impressive, with differences in elevation of less than 2 centimeters across its entire surface, a standard of precision that even many modern construction projects struggle to achieve without laser-guided instruments. How did the ancient Egyptians accomplish such feats with supposedly simple tools like dolerite hammers, wooden levers, and ropes made of plant fibers? The answer remains elusive. Some scholars propose that the Egyptians had an intuitive understanding of mechanical principles such as leverage, counterweight, and controlled friction, and that they applied these techniques masterfully on an unprecedented scale. Others suggest that the workforce was composed not of slaves, as once widely believed, but of highly skilled laborers organized into teams, motivated by religious duty and the promise of rewards in the afterlife. Nevertheless, there are details that still refuse to fit neatly into the conventional explanations. The fine limestone used to cover the pyramid, for example, was quarried at Tura, located several kilometers away on the opposite side of the Nile River. Transporting such massive blocks, ferrying them across the river, and then raising them to heights exceeding 100 meters, all without cranes or modern machinery, represents a logistical challenge of staggering proportions. The internal corridors of the pyramid, carved with exacting precision and aligned in ways that seem to point towards specific stars, add another layer of complexity to the mystery. Scholars have proposed astronomical, ritualistic, and mathematical interpretations to explain the pyramid's measurements and orientation. Yet no single theory fully accounts for the combination of symbolism, functionality, and technical perfection that defines this ancient wonder. Beyond the Great Pyramid, other remnants of Egyptian craftsmanship reveal an astonishing level of skill in working stone. Massive granite blocks precisely cut and fitted, colossal basalt sarcophagi polished to a mirror-like finish, and delicate reliefs etched into extremely hard stones. The lack of appropriate metallic tools among archaeological finds adds yet another layer to the mystery. If, as conventional wisdom holds, the Egyptians at that time had no iron tools, how were they able to shape and polish granite and diorite with such extraordinary precision? Some alternative researchers speculate about lost technologies, methods that combined practical knowledge with techniques that have yet to be rediscovered. Others lean towards more pragmatic explanations. The use of sand as an abrasive, copper saws reinforced with quartz sand, or sophisticated methods of liquid-assisted cutting and polishing. Regardless of the exact means, what remains indisputable is that the builders of the pyramids achieved a level of technical mastery that continues to inspire awe. The Great Pyramid has withstood earthquakes, sandstorms, millennia of erosion, and human interference, and yet it remains standing, a tangible testament to the ambition and ingenuity of its creators. As tourists cluster at the foot of its mighty flanks and archaeologists continue to decipher clues hidden in its corridors and secret chambers, the Great Pyramid stands, majestic and unshaken, as a reminder that human beings, in some forgotten moment of history, managed to achieve what seems impossible. A feat that urges us to wonder whether, buried in the sands of time, there might still lie answers capable of reshaping everything we think we know. The Olmec Civilization, the enigmatic forefathers of Mesoamerica. Long before the Maya raised their great cities in the jungles or the Aztecs built their temples over the lakes of Tenochtitlan, there existed a culture that, in the silent shadows of the tropical rainforests of what is now southeastern Mexico, laid the foundations of the entire Mesoamerican civilization. This culture, known as the Olmecs, remains to this day one of the greatest archaeological enigmas of the American continent. A civilization whose influence was profound, yet whose true face continues to be shrouded in mystery. The Olmecs flourished approximately between 1500 and 400 BCE, in regions that today largely correspond to the Mexican states of Veracruz and Tabasco. Although their immediate territory was not as vast as that of later civilizations, Their cultural influence spread far beyond their borders, shaping ideas, symbols, and technologies that would become the pillars of the Mesoamerican world. When archaeologists began to uncover the remnants of this civilization in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, they were astonished. The monumental nature of their works, the artistic mastery they displayed, and the complexity of their culture did not fit the narrative then held about a continent thought to have developed sophisticated societies much later. One of the most iconic images of the Olmecs is undoubtedly their colossal stone heads. These sculptures, carved from basalt blocks weighing up to 40 tons, depict human faces with strong, distinctive features and expressions of serene authority or commanding power. Each head is unique in its details, suggesting that they represented specific individuals, perhaps rulers or warriors, whose memory was meant to endure forever. The existence of these heads raises many questions. How did the Olmecs manage to transport such massive stones from distant quarries through dense jungles and swampy terrain? What tools did they use to carve the hard basalt so masterfully? And perhaps most puzzling of all, why did they choose such an incredibly challenging medium for their portraits? But the colossal heads are only a fraction of their cultural legacy. The Olmecs also left behind monumental altars, complex earthen platforms, finely engraved stelae, and a stunning variety of small jade figurines, a material they revered as sacred. For the Olmecs, jade was not merely a luxury item. It symbolized life, water, and fertility, and the craftsmanship they demonstrated in working it shows extraordinary technical expertise. Polished pieces with a deep luster, carved with intricate detail, all achieved without the benefit of metal tools, which would facilitate such work in later times. One of the most fascinating aspects of Olmec culture is its iconography. Many of their artworks depict hybrid creatures combining human and animal traits, especially those of the jaguar. The jaguar, as the apex predator of the rainforest, held profound spiritual significance and was associated with power, strength, and the spirit world. The frequent depictions of these human-jaguar hybrids have led many researchers to theorize that the Olmecs may have practiced shamanism, in which select individuals, through trance states, spiritually transformed into powerful animal beings. Moreover, the Olmecs are credited with the invention of several fundamental cultural elements of Mesoamerica. They are believed to have developed an early writing system based on glyphs, although the extent of its sophistication is still under debate. Some discoveries, such as the famous Cascajal block, reveal symbols that may constitute one of the earliest known scripts on the continent, predating even that of the Maya. The Olmecs are also associated with the invention of a numerical system, the concept of zero in Mesoamerica, and quite possibly the initiation of the 260-day ritual calendar, later widely adopted and elaborated by successor civilizations. Despite these groundbreaking contributions, our knowledge of the Olmecs remains fragmented. No fully excavated Olmec city has yet revealed the full structure of their social organization or government. Sites such as San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapotes show evidence of urbanization, monumental ceremonial platforms, residential compounds, and sophisticated drainage systems. But the specifics of their political system, religious practices, and daily life remain largely obscured. Were the Olmecs ruled by priest-kings? Did they have well-defined social classes? Was their power centralized or dispersed among different ceremonial centers? Archaeologists continue to seek these answers. The decline of the Olmec civilization is equally mysterious. Around 400 BCE, their major centers were abandoned. Some scholars suggest that environmental changes, such as shifts in river courses, may have destroyed their agricultural base. Others propose internal conflicts or invasions by neighboring groups as possible causes of their fall. Nevertheless, what is undeniable is that, although the Olmecs disappeared as a dominant civilization, their legacy endured. Later cultures, the Maya, Zapotecs, Mixtecs, and Aztecs, inherited essential elements from the Olmecs. The organization of ceremonial centers, the worship of nature deities, hieroglyphic writing, the ritual ball game, and many aspects of their worldview. In a sense, the Olmecs never truly vanished. Their spirit lived on, adapted and transformed, in the civilizations that built upon the foundations they had laid. Today, as archaeologists continue to uncover new remains and piece together the puzzle of their past, The Olmecs still gaze at us from across the centuries, their faces immortalized in stone, their ideas rooted in the very heart of Mesoamerican culture. The Olmec Civilization, quiet yet ever-present, reminds us that even in the most humid and forgotten corners of history, brilliant cultures flourished, cultures capable of dreaming grandly, of carving their aspirations into stone, and of transmitting through the ages the enduring echo of their greatness. Göbekli Tepe, the oldest known temple of humanity. On a forgotten hill in southeastern Turkey, in the region of Anatolia, where the wind endlessly sweeps across barren plains and the sun casts eternal shadows on the dusty ground, rests one of the most astonishing discoveries of modern archaeology, Göbekli Tepe. This site, buried for thousands of years under layers of earth, dust, and rubble, has profoundly reshaped our understanding of when and how the first civilizations emerged, challenging many previously held assumptions. Göbekli Tepe, which means Potbelly Hill in Turkish, was discovered and excavated in the 1990s by the German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt. From the beginning, it was clear that this site was something entirely unique. Unlike other known sites from the Neolithic period, where evidence of farming communities or early villages is found, here emerged monumental stone structures that seemed to serve purely ceremonial or religious purposes. What left the archaeological world truly astonished was not only the complexity of the structures but above all their age. Radiocarbon dating placed the construction of Göbekli Tepe around 9,600 years before Christ, a time when humanity was still believed to live in small, nomadic hunter-gatherer groups, far from developing stable settlements or complex social structures. How could people who had not yet domesticated plants or animals and who knew nothing of cities have managed to erect such vast and intricate monuments? The structures at Göbekli Tepe consist of massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some reaching up to 6 meters in height and weighing several tons, arranged in concentric circles. Many of these pillars are intricately decorated with relief carvings of animals: foxes, snakes, wild boars, birds, and scorpions, depicted with a vitality and precision that remains astonishing even today. Interestingly, there is little evidence of permanent human settlement around Göbekli Tepe. No remains of houses, gardens, or fields have been found. Everything suggests that this site was not meant for living but served instead as a gathering place for collective rituals and ceremonies. This discovery challenges the classic narrative that agriculture led to stable communities, which in turn allowed for the construction of temples and ceremonial centers. Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite, that the human drive for spiritual connection and collective worship may have come first, prompting people to organize labor, collaborate, and eventually develop agriculture to sustain these new needs. If this is true, religion or spirituality was not the product of civilization but one of its prime engines. The construction of Göbekli Tepe must have been an incredible logistical feat. Quarrying, transporting, and erecting these massive stones would have required careful planning, extensive cooperation, and specialized knowledge of material handling, leverage techniques, and communal organization. The smooth surfaces and precise arrangement of the stone circles demonstrate a sophistication that was never previously attributed to such an ancient time. The animal reliefs on the pillars also appear to be far from random. Many researchers believe they held symbolic meanings, perhaps representing totems of different tribes, or depicting astronomical events and constellations. Some hypotheses propose that Göbekli Tepe may have functioned as an early observatory, where the movements of celestial bodies were tracked and recorded in stone, knowledge crucial for anticipating the seasons and planning migrations or hunting activities. Another mystery is the deliberate burial of the site. Around 8,000 years before Christ, the builders of Göbekli Tepe systematically began to cover their monumental structures with rubble, earth, and debris. This does not appear to have been an act of destruction or external aggression but a deliberate ritual closure, as if the community had decided to respectfully end this chapter of their spiritual history. The reasons behind this conscious burial remain speculative. Perhaps religious beliefs evolved. Perhaps new social structures, driven by the rise of agriculture, rendered the old rituals obsolete. Whatever the reasons, this deliberate act contributed greatly to the extraordinary preservation of the site's structures. Today, only a small fraction of the entire complex has been excavated. The vast majority of Göbekli Tepe remains buried beneath the hill, protected by the sands of time, awaiting future generations of archaeologists to reveal its secrets. Each new discovery, each newly uncovered pillar, adds pieces to the puzzle of understanding the hopes, fears, and dreams of those early builders. Göbekli Tepe not only forces us to rethink our view of the Neolithic era but compels us to reconsider what it means to be human. It shows that long before cities, empires, or machines, human beings were already coming together to celebrate something greater than themselves. The mystery of existence, the cycles of life, and the invisible forces of stars and spirits. And as the winds continue to blow over the silent stone circles and the sun throws its ancient shadows across the carved pillars, we, the heirs of this primal human impulse for meaning and connection, still listen attentively, striving to decipher the message that those ancient architects of mystery left for eternity in the stone. Easter Island, the mystery of the Moai. In the heart of the Pacific Ocean, more than 3,500 kilometers away from the coast of Chile, surrounded by deep, endless waters that seem to stretch into infinity, lies one of the most enigmatic places on Earth. Easter Island, known to its original inhabitants as Rapa Nui, a piece of volcanic land that, despite its small size and apparent isolation, holds one of humanity's greatest mysteries. The imposing Moai, the giant stone statues that have defied time and continue to captivate and baffle travelers, archaeologists, and curious minds alike. Easter Island feels like a place suspended outside the normal flow of time, a land where the wind sweeps freely across rolling grasslands, where the ocean tirelessly crashes against black lava cliffs, and where more than 900 monumental figures, some towering over 10 meters tall and weighing several tons, silently gaze inland, as if keeping watch over a past that refuses to be forgotten. The Moai are sculptures carved primarily from volcanic tuff, a relatively soft and workable stone quarried from the crater of Reno-Raraku, a site that today appears as an immense open-air workshop where statues remain frozen in various stages of completion. The sheer thought of designing, carving, transporting, and erecting such colossal figures on an island with limited resources raises profound questions about the social organization, technical skills, and spiritual beliefs of the ancient Rapa Nui people. According to oral tradition, the Moai represented important ancestors, tribal leaders, or revered figures who, after death, continued to protect their descendants. They were symbols of power, prestige, and spiritual authority, guardians tasked with ensuring the fertility of the land and the prosperity of the people. Each clan had its own set of Moai, usually erected on ceremonial platforms called ahu, which often also served as burial sites. However, the true marvel lies not only in their numbers or size, but in the way they were transported and raised. Without draft animals, without wheels, without metals, and across rough volcanic terrain, the Rapa Nui people managed to move these giant statues, a technical feat that still puzzles modern researchers. One of the most widely accepted theories suggests that the Moai were walked upright. By attaching ropes to different points and carefully coordinating the pulling, groups of people could rock the statues from side to side, gradually moving them forward, almost as if the statues themselves were alive. Modern experiments that have recreated this method successfully lend a near-magical quality to the Moai, turning them not just into representations of ancestors, but into beings animated by collective human will. The society that erected the Moai must have been highly organized. They developed a clear hierarchical system, advanced engineering knowledge, and a deep spiritual connection to their environment. Yet, the peak of their cultural achievements coincided with the beginning of their ecological and societal collapse. As the population grew and Moai construction intensified, the island's natural resources became increasingly strained. Massive deforestation, driven partly by the need for wood to transport the statues and for other daily uses, led to irreversible environmental degradation. Without trees, soil erosion increased, crop yields fell, and complex ecosystems collapsed. Eventually, famine, internal conflicts, and wars between clans devastated the social fabric of Rapa Nui. The signs of this crisis are visible across the island. Many unfinished statues lie abandoned on the slopes of Reno-Raraku, as if the carvers had suddenly dropped their tools and walked away. Elsewhere, Toppled and broken Moai bear silent witness to violent conflicts where destroying an opponent's statues became a symbolic act of humiliation and spiritual conquest. When European explorers arrived on Easter Island in the 17th century after Christ, they encountered a society very different from the one that had once built the Moai. The population had drastically declined, many of the Ahu were in ruins, and traditional practices had given way to new religious expressions, such as the Birdman cult, a creative adaptation to a depleted and hostile environment. Despite these changes and hardships, the Moai endured. Silent and resilient, they withstood storms, earthquakes, and centuries of neglect. Their presence is not merely a relic of a lost culture, but a monument to human creativity, resilience, and vision. Today, Easter Island continues to fascinate both visitors and researchers. Archaeologists work to unlock the secrets of the Moai, their symbolic meaning, the techniques of their creation, and their role in the agricultural, astronomical, and social systems of ancient Rapa Nui. Each Moai, with its oversized head, distinct facial features, and massive, angular body, tells a story of devotion, belief, and creative force. They remind us that even under the harshest conditions, human beings possess the ability to dream, to create beauty, and to leave behind legacies that transcend their own lifespans. The story of Rapa Nui is not just a cautionary tale about ecological fragility, but also a testament to cultural resilience. It demonstrates how memory and identity can endure through immense adversity, preserved not in written records but in stone, in silent guardians that defy the passing of time. And as the Pacific winds continue to brush across their stoic faces and the waves ceaselessly break against the volcanic shores, the Moai keep watch, eternal witnesses to a human epic that we are still striving to fully comprehend. Atlantis, the eternal mystery of the lost civilization. Within the oldest folds of our collective memory, beyond the documented chronicles of history and the tales of known empires, there exists a myth that has fascinated generations, inspired explorers, ignited writers' imaginations, and challenged scientists. The myth of Atlantis, that extraordinary civilization that, according to legend, reached unparalleled heights of splendor before being swallowed by the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. The story of Atlantis comes to us primarily through the dialogues of the Greek philosopher Plato, especially in his works Timaeus and Critias, where he recounts how, thousands of years ago, there existed an island larger than Libya and Asia combined, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now know as the Strait of Gibraltar. There, according to Plato, flourished an advanced civilization, with palaces of epic proportions, temples clad in shining metals, immense canals irrigating vast fields, and a political and social organization that combined wisdom, power, and wealth in measures that defy modern imagination. The Atlanteans, endowed with great technical and artistic knowledge, allegedly extended their influence across much of the known world until their greed and moral decay provoked their downfall, punished by the gods through a sudden catastrophe that submerged their empire beneath the waves. For centuries, the story of Atlantis was interpreted as a moral allegory or a philosophical construction meant to illustrate the virtues of moderation and the dangers of arrogance. Yet, the magnetic pull of the narrative was so powerful that countless investigators, from antiquity to the present day, have sought real traces of this lost civilization. Did Atlantis really exist? Was it an echo of some forgotten culture, transmitted through generations of oral storytellers until it crystallized in Plato's writings? Or was it a deliberate invention, a literary tool designed to convey ethical teachings? Throughout the centuries, countless theories have been proposed regarding the whereabouts of Atlantis. Some scholars have situated Atlantis in the Mediterranean, identifying it with the island of Santorini, ancient Thera, where a cataclysmic volcanic eruption around the year 1500 before Christ destroyed the flourishing Minoan civilization. Others have searched for it in the Atlantic Ocean, proposing locations as varied as the Azores, the coasts of Spain, or even submerged lands in South America. Bolder hypotheses have linked Atlantis to ancient civilizations such as Egypt or the Mayans, suggesting that it could represent ancestral memories of a world that existed before the end of the last great ice age, more than 12,000 years ago. Regardless of its actual existence, the myth of Atlantis resonates deeply within the human psyche. It embodies the idea of a civilization that attained unimaginable heights of knowledge, spirituality, and power, only to fall because of its own excesses. It serves as an eternal warning about human arrogance and a reminder of the fragility of even the greatest achievements. Plato describes Atlantis with such richness of detail that, although they may at times seem like fanciful inventions, they possess an internal coherence that has intrigued scholars for centuries. He speaks of concentric rings of land and water, a majestic capital fortified by walls and canals, temples dedicated to Poseidon, and natural resources so abundant that precious metals seem to spring from the earth itself. Did Plato reconstruct fragmentary memories of lost cultures transmitted through oral traditions? Or, as some speculate, was he privy to ancient knowledge preserved by Egyptian priests who remembered catastrophic events that wiped out entire civilizations? Whatever the case may be, starting from the Renaissance, the search for Atlantis became a true obsession. Expeditions were launched, old maps reinterpreted, and each new archaeological discovery beneath the waves seemed to rekindle the hope of uncovering the legendary island. In the 20th century, some researchers believed they had found evidence of submerged structures near the Bahamas, such as the famous formations at Bimini, fueling speculation that they had found remnants of Atlantis. Others turned their attention to the coasts of West Africa, where megalithic sites and oral traditions spoke of sunken lands. Yet despite all efforts, Atlantis remains elusive. The closer one seems to get, the more it slips away, remaining more of a dream than a tangible reality. And perhaps therein lies its true power. As an eternal possibility, a mirror of what once was or what could have been, had humanity chosen a path of wisdom rather than ambition. Today, Atlantis is more than just a geographical mystery. It has become a universal symbol, a symbol of lost knowledge, of the yearning for a better world, and of the dream of an ideal society built not on dominance over nature, but on harmony with it. The myth of Atlantis continues to inspire novels, films, scientific debates, and spiritual reflections. And as long as the human spirit seeks uncharted horizons and dreams of greater worlds, Atlantis will live on, in our imaginations, our hopes, and our striving for something greater than ourselves. And perhaps, somewhere deep beneath ancient seas, under layers of sand and salt accumulated over millennia, the remains of a forgotten city still whisper their tales, waiting for ears willing to listen, and for minds ready to see beyond myth into the realm of timeless truth. The Nabataean culture and the mystery of Petra. Across the vast and arid deserts of the Middle East, where the relentless sun scorches endless dunes and the winds carry sands that have witnessed the rise and fall of countless empires, lies one of the most fascinating archaeological sites of the ancient world. Petra, the city carved from stone, the heart of the enigmatic Nabataean civilization, a place that, like a petrified mirage, has endured the passing centuries and continues to astound those who venture into its hidden corners, drawn by the whispers of its enduring mystery. The Nabataeans were a Semitic people who, against all apparent odds, managed to thrive in an environment most would have considered utterly inhospitable. Initially nomadic and later master traders, they established dominance over the key caravan routes of their time, controlling the trade of spices, incense, silk, and precious metals between Arabia, Egypt, Syria, and the Mediterranean. Their ability to negotiate, adapt, and resist the pressures of powerful empires such as Rome and Persia speaks to a political intelligence and cultural sophistication often underestimated by modern history. The jewel of their civilization was Petra, a city literally sculpted into the rose-colored sandstone cliffs, hidden among narrow canyons and rugged mountains. Its location was no accident. It provided natural defense against invasions while offering strategic access to major trade routes. Through the narrow and dramatic gorge known as the Sick, one reaches Petra's most iconic site, the Treasury or Alcazna, a monumental facade nearly 40 meters high, carved directly into living rock, adorned with columns, statues, and intricate reliefs that blend Hellenistic, Egyptian, and Eastern artistic traditions into a breathtaking masterpiece. Yet Petra is far more than just its famous facade. At its height, the city was a complex network of temples, tombs, paved streets, ritual altars, water cisterns, and humble dwellings, all masterfully adapted to the harsh landscape. The Nabataeans demonstrated extraordinary engineering skills, particularly in water management, constructing sophisticated systems of canals, dams, and underground reservoirs that allowed them to survive and even flourish in a fiercely arid environment. Their ability to capture and store every precious drop of rainwater was not only a means of survival, but a strategic advantage that bolstered their dominance over enemies and trade competitors. The art and architecture of the Nabataeans reflect a unique fusion of cultures. Although Petra is often associated with Greek or Roman influences, the reality is far richer. The Nabataeans deliberately assimilated the best elements of other civilizations without losing their own distinct identity. Their pantheon of deities, including Dushara and Aluzza, was a blend of indigenous and adopted gods, while their language, a variant of Aramaic, bore unmistakable features unique to their people. And yet, the mystery endures. How could such a sophisticated culture vanish so quietly from the pages of history? By the 1st century after Christ, Petra began to be gradually absorbed into the Roman Empire. While the Romans added their own architectural imprints, such as theaters and baths, Petra's importance as a trading hub began to decline. The shifting of trade routes toward maritime channels and new ports like Alexandria stripped Petra of its economic lifeline. Added to this were devastating natural disasters. Notably, the massive earthquake of the year 363 after Christ destroyed much of Petra's infrastructure, including its vital water management systems. Without commerce, without reliable water supplies, and without political power, Petra slowly faded into obscurity. By the time the Crusaders passed through the region in the 12th century after Christ, they found only ruins and faint echoes of its former grandeur. Petra disappeared from Western memory, hidden under layers of sand and stone, until it was rediscovered in the year 1812 by the Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, who disguised himself as an Arab pilgrim to reach the site. Even today, Petra guards many of its secrets. Although significant portions of its major monuments have been excavated, it is estimated that less than 20% of the original city has been uncovered. The rest remains buried beneath the sands and rocks, patiently awaiting future generations of archaeologists, who might one day reveal the full story of the Nabataeans. Who were they truly? Where did they acquire their remarkable knowledge of architecture and engineering? And how did they manage to maintain their independence for so long in a world dominated by vast empires? The scarcity of Nabataean written records only deepens the enigma. Most of what we know comes from fragmentary inscriptions and the accounts of neighboring civilizations such as the Greeks and Romans, who viewed the Nabataeans with a mixture of admiration and condescension. What is clear, however, is that Nabataean culture embodied a fascinating paradox. Simultaneously deeply local and boldly cosmopolitan, pragmatic in its use of resources yet capable of producing works of sublime artistic beauty. Today, as the sun sets over the rose-red cliffs of Petra, bathing them in hues of gold and crimson, the echoes of that lost civilization seem to whisper among the canyon walls, a silent reminder that even in the most barren landscapes, and under the harshest conditions, the human spirit is capable of imagining, creating, and leaving behind a legacy that transcends time itself. Thus, Petra endures, not merely as a relic of stone, but as a living testament to the ingenuity, resilience, and grandeur of a people who dared to challenge the desert and carve their dreams into the eternal rock. Puma Punku and its impossible stones. High upon the Bolivian Altiplano, where the wind blows incessantly over vast and desolate plains and the sky stretches into an overwhelming, endless dome, stand the remains of one of the most mysterious archaeological sites in the world. Puma Punku, part of the expansive Tiwanaku complex, whose age and craftsmanship continue to challenge archaeologists, engineers, and adventurers alike. A place where stone itself seems to defy the natural order, where blocks weighing hundreds of tons were cut, shaped, and assembled with a precision that conventional historical explanations struggle to account for. At first glance, Puma Punku may appear to be little more than a chaotic scattering of stones, as if some immense force had torn apart a colossal structure in the distant past. Yet, upon closer inspection, as one's eyes adjust to the details, a marvel of engineering slowly reveals itself, one that neither time nor erosion has managed to fully erase. The stones lying across the site are not rough, randomly shaped fragments. They are intricately crafted blocks with perfectly cut angles, flawlessly straight grooves, uniform circular holes, and joints so precise that in some cases not even a single sheet of paper could fit between them. The predominant material used at Puma Punku is andesite, a volcanic rock comparable in hardness to granite. Working andesite with primitive stone tools would have been an extraordinary, nearly impossible task. Yet the builders of Puma Punku not only managed to cut and transport these immense blocks, some weighing more than 100 tons, but they also shaped them with such meticulous precision that even modern engineers marvel at their work. The inevitable question that arises when faced with such achievements is, how did they do it? Traditional archaeology proposes that the Tiwanakotas used hammerstones, sand abrasion, and simple techniques to carve the stones. However, many modern researchers and engineers have expressed serious doubts about the feasibility of achieving such geometric perfection on such a grand scale with those basic methods. Beyond the challenges of carving, transporting the blocks presents another enormous puzzle. It is believed that the stones were quarried from sites located dozens of kilometers away. Moving such massive blocks across rugged terrain, without the use of wheels, pulleys, or draft animals, would have required not only immense manpower but also sophisticated knowledge of physics, mechanics, and logistical coordination. Some alternative theories, as speculative as they may be, suggest that the builders of Puma Punku possess technologies now lost to history, or perhaps knowledge that surpasses what we currently attribute to ancient civilizations. Others have even speculated about the involvement of external intelligences, though most serious scholars strive to find explanations within the realm of human capability. Regardless of the methods used, the original purpose of Puma Punku remains an equally tantalizing mystery. Was it a temple, a ceremonial center, an astronomical observatory, or perhaps a meeting place for various cultures from across the Andes? The architectural layout suggests that Puma Punku was part of a vast religious complex, precisely oriented toward astronomical phenomena such as the solstices, indicating a profound understanding of celestial cycles. The symbology found throughout Tiwanaku strengthens this interpretation. Depictions of deities associated with agriculture and astronomy, sculptures representing portals or thresholds between worlds, and an iconography that reflects a worldview in which the earthly and the divine were deeply interconnected. The decline of Tiwanaku, and consequently Puma Punku, remains a topic of debate. Some scholars attribute it to severe climatic changes, such as prolonged droughts that affected Lake Titicaca between the 9th and 10th centuries after Christ. Others propose that internal conflicts or environmental degradation due to overpopulation and resource exploitation may have led to its abandonment. By the time Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century after Christ, they found Tiwanaku and Puma Punku already lying in ruins, surrounded by myths and revered by the local indigenous peoples, who attributed their construction to gods or a vanished, ancient race. Today, Puma Punku continues to stand as an open mystery. Although archaeological research has provided valuable insights into Tiwanaku culture, it remains far from solving the enigma of its construction. The scattered andesite blocks, so meticulously crafted and arranged, seem to pose a silent challenge to all who gaze upon them. Who were the craftsmen that shaped them? What knowledge did they possess? And what happened to that knowledge over the ages? Perhaps the most astonishing aspect of Puma Punku is not merely the technical feats it represents, but rather the humbling realization that our understanding of human history is still incomplete, layered with complexities and wonders yet to be fully revealed. As the sun sets behind the mountains of the Altiplano, casting long, haunting shadows across the stones of Puma Punku, and as the cold of night begins to settle in and the sky becomes a vast, star-filled tapestry, one might almost hear, carried by the wind, the whispers of those ancient builders telling their forgotten stories. Puma Punku endures as a riddle, as a monument to lost knowledge, and as a silent guardian of a chapter of humanity's past that, perhaps with renewed wisdom and curiosity, we may one day begin to fully comprehend. The great Sphinx of Giza and its true age. In the scorching heat of the Egyptian desert, where the horizon shimmers under an unrelenting sun and windswept sands have, over the millennia, buried and revealed entire empires, stands one of the most iconic and enigmatic monuments of human civilization, the Great Sphinx of Giza. Its profile sharply outlined against the vast sky, its lion-like body stretched across the plateau, and its serene, enigmatic face have captivated generations of archaeologists, poets, travelers, and dreamers alike. Yet, despite its global fame, many of its secrets remain hidden, buried not only under layers of sand but also beneath centuries of speculation and conflicting theories. The Great Sphinx of Giza, located on the western bank of the Nile River, across from the modern city of Cairo, measures more than 70 meters in length and nearly 20 meters in height. Carved directly from the bedrock of the Giza Plateau, it appears to represent the combination of the powerful body of a lion, a universal symbol of strength and royal authority, with the intelligent face of a pharaoh, thus merging animal power with human intellect. The most widely accepted academic view holds that the Sphinx was constructed during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, around 2,500 years before Christ, as part of the vast funerary complex that includes the Second Pyramid of Giza. According to this interpretation, the face of the Sphinx is a stylized portrait of Khafre himself, and its function would have been to guard the royal tombs, ensuring the pharaoh's spiritual protection on his journey into eternity. However, for several decades now, a growing number of independent researchers and some academic scholars have questioned this chronology, suggesting that the Sphinx could be far older than traditionally believed, perhaps several thousand years older. One of the central arguments of this alternative theory is the erosion observable on the body of the Sphinx. Whereas wind erosion, typical of desert environments, generally produces horizontal patterns, the erosion visible on the Sphinx and its enclosure is primarily vertical, which many geologists interpret as the result of prolonged exposure to heavy rainfall. Considering that the last time northern Africa experienced sustained torrential rains was at the end of the last ice age, more than 9,000 years ago, a startling question emerges. Could the Sphinx have been carved during a time when the climate of the region was radically different, long before the rise of the known Egyptian civilization? Geologist Robert Schoch was among the first to propose in the early 1990s that the patterns of erosion on the Sphinx indicated an age possibly dating back to around 9,500 years before Christ, pushing the monument's origins far beyond the accepted timeline of pharaonic Egypt. This claim, though controversial, sparked an intense debate about the possibility of advanced civilizations predating the Sumerians, the Egyptians, and the Chinese. Of course, such ideas have faced strong resistance from mainstream academics, many of whom argue that there is no substantial archaeological evidence supporting the existence of advanced cultures so far back in time. Traditional Egyptologists insist that the artistic styles, the construction techniques, and the lack of older written records firmly anchor the Sphinx within the Old Kingdom era. And yet, the mystery lingers. The written records of ancient Egypt that mention the Sphinx are surprisingly scarce, and even the earliest references treat it as an ancient, venerable monument. One of the most famous inscriptions, the Dream Stele erected by Pharaoh Thutmose IV around 1,400 years before Christ, describes the Sphinx as buried under the sands, neglected and forgotten long before the height of the classical Egyptian period. Why would the Sphinx, if built under Khafre, have fallen into obscurity so quickly? Why do restoration efforts only appear centuries later, suggesting it had already passed into the realm of legend? Another curious aspect is the noticeable disproportion between the head and the body of the Sphinx. The head appears too small in comparison to the massive, elongated body. Some researchers propose that the Sphinx may have originally featured a different head, possibly that of a full lion, later recarved into a human form by a pharaoh seeking to appropriate the monument. If this theory is correct, it would strongly suggest that the original structure predated Khafre by millennia, and that the ancient Egyptians inherited and adapted a much older monument to fit their religious and cultural framework. The symbolic significance of the Sphinx, moreover, is as deep and layered as its physical form. More than merely a funerary guardian, it may represent a cosmic link between earth and sky, between the cycles of the sun and the divine right of kingship. Its perfect eastward alignment toward the rising sun hints at a profound solar connection, symbolizing resurrection, rebirth, and eternal renewal. Some researchers have even drawn connections between the Sphinx and ancient constellations, particularly Leo, proposing that its leonine shape had astronomical significance tied to celestial events from epochs long forgotten. Thus, The Great Sphinx of Giza endures not only as a marvel of ancient engineering but also as a living enigma that defies easy explanation. Each attempt to date it, to decode its original function, or to reconstruct its full story seems only to deepen the mystery and reveal the profound gaps in our understanding of human history. Today, as the golden rays of the sunrise brush against its impassive features and the desert awakens once more with the echoes of ancient caravans and legends, the Sphinx remains as enigmatic as ever. Perhaps, in its eternal stillness, it guards secrets that humanity has yet to be ready to comprehend fully, reminding us that, in our quest to uncover the truths of our past, we are merely scratching the surface of a much deeper and more wondrous story. Nan Madol, the floating city of Micronesia. Lost in the deep blue expanse of the Pacific Ocean, beyond the modern shipping lanes and the horizons where the memory of forgotten civilizations fades into the mist, rises a place as improbable as it is fascinating, Nan Madol, a complex of artificial islets in the eastern lagoon of the island of Pohnpei, in what is now the Federated States of Micronesia. A labyrinth of canals, islets, and cyclopean stone walls, often called the Venice of the Pacific, which, despite its imposing presence, remains cloaked in a mystery as deep as the waters that surround it. Nan Madol is not merely a scattering of ancient ruins. It is a ceremonial city of monumental proportions, constructed upon more than 90 artificial islands, interconnected by narrow canals and surrounded by platforms made of basalt stone, the construction of which would challenge even modern engineering. The basalt blocks used in the walls, some weighing several tons, continue to baffle researchers, raising questions that remain unanswered to this day. The origins of Nan Madol are commonly traced back to around the 8th century after Christ, though archaeological findings suggest that the area may have been occupied even earlier. The city served as the political and ceremonial center of the mysterious Sotalar dynasty, rulers who exerted absolute control over Pohnpei before eventually fading into history, leaving behind only fragmented memories. The construction of Nan Madol presents logistical and technological challenges that have puzzled generations of explorers and archaeologists. How could its builders, without cranes, wheels, or modern machinery, have transported massive basalt columns up to 6 meters long and weighing thousands of kilograms? Where were these stones quarried, and how were they moved across mangroves, reefs, and shallow waters to build walls reaching heights of up to 7 meters? Local legends offer explanations that are more poetic than technical. They speak of two brothers, Olasopa and Olasopa, magicians who used supernatural powers to levitate the massive stones into place, constructing the city for divine rulers. For the ancestral peoples of Pohnpei, Nan Madol was not merely a human achievement but a sacred creation, a place where the line between the human and the divine blurred. The canals, now silent and covered with algae and shadows, were once bustling avenues where ceremonial canoes glided, carrying offerings, emissaries, and dignitaries. The layout of the islets reveals meticulous planning. Specific areas were reserved for religious rituals, others for the noble residences, and some for administrative activities. The most significant islet, Nanduas, contains a series of tombs surrounded by towering basalt walls that, even after centuries of abandonment, command an atmosphere of reverence and mystery. It is believed that within these enclosures lay the remains of the Sotalar kings, whose divine authority was absolute until it was overthrown by a rebellion of local clans. The downfall of the Sotalar dynasty remains a chapter shrouded in mist. Traditional accounts speak of a foreigner, Isoklikal, who led an uprising and established a new social order based on a confederation of independent clans, marking the end of centralized power at Nan Madol. As the city was gradually abandoned, the jungle and the sea reclaimed their dominion. Today, Nan Madol lies entangled in lush tropical vegetation, its black basalt walls reflected in the still waters, its canals now home to birds, fish, and the whispers of a nearly forgotten legacy. Yet the technical mysteries are only part of what makes Nan Madol so compelling. Why would such a monumental city be built on artificial islets in a remote, inhospitable environment? Some archaeologists suggest that the physical separation was intentional, serving a ritualistic purpose, to isolate the divine rulers from the general populace, creating a sacred space where governance, religion, and ceremony merged into a single expression of ultimate authority. Others propose more practical reasons: a way to control access to power, to monitor the movements of subjects, and to create a fortified ceremonial center. Regardless of the motives, the result stands as a unique architectural achievement that proves even isolated island societies could conceive and realize visions of astounding magnitude. Nan Madol has been the subject of countless expeditions, studies, and theories, some grounded in scientific inquiry, others fueled by imagination and speculation. Romantic theories have linked it to the fabled continent of Lemuria or the legend of Atlantis, seeing in its ruins a relic of an ancient world lost to time. Although no serious evidence supports such associations, the very fact that these ideas exist is a testament to Nan Madol's evocative power. Today, Nan Madol faces new threats: climate change, rising sea levels, and a lack of resources for preservation endanger this already fragile archaeological treasure. UNESCO has designated it a World Heritage Site in danger, recognizing both its global importance and the urgent need to protect it. To walk among the ruins of Nan Madol today, to hear the whisper of the wind in the mangroves and the soft lapping of water in forgotten canals, is to experience a near-supernatural sensation. Every crumbled wall, every moss-covered passage seems to murmur stories of ancestral ceremonies, of divine kings and ancient conflicts, of dreams that once floated upon the waters. As solid and real as the basalt stones themselves, Nan Madol endures, proud and silent, as a reminder that human creativity, religious devotion, and political ambition can leave indelible marks even in the most remote corners of the world. And as long as its stones stand, Nan Madol will continue to fascinate and inspire those bold enough to dream of civilizations that the world has nearly forgotten. The giants of Easter Island, Moai, at the farthest edge of the Pacific Ocean, where the endless blue seems to merge seamlessly with the sky and the relentless waves crash against steep cliffs, lies a place where time appears to stand still. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, as it is known to its original inhabitants, an isolated piece of land lost amidst the winds and currents of the vast ocean, that holds one of the most astonishing mysteries of world archaeology. The Moai, colossal stone statues that have stood for centuries, silently guarding the horizon. The Moai are far more than mere stone sculptures. They are silent witnesses to a civilization that, under extreme conditions, achieved feats that continue to astonish the modern world. Each of these figures, some exceeding 10 meters in height and weighing over 80 tons, was carved by hand at the quarry of the Reno Ruraku volcano, transported by methods that are still debated, and erected on ceremonial platforms known as ahu scattered along the island's coastline. It is believed that the construction of the Moai began around the 13th century after Christ, although some evidence suggests that the earliest examples may be even older. For centuries, Rapa Nui artisans sculpted these figures using basic tools made of softer stone, giving them their distinctive elongated faces, prominent noses, tightly pressed lips, and long earlobes, a style that remained remarkably consistent over generations. The purpose of the Moai has been the subject of multiple interpretations. The most widely accepted theory holds that they represented the deified ancestors of the Rapa Nui clans. Each statue was a physical manifestation of the spiritual power and protection that an ancestor provided to their living descendants, ensuring fertility, abundance, and stability. Their typical positioning, with their backs to the ocean and their faces toward the villages, reinforced this notion of eternal guardianship. Yet, the creation and transportation of the Moai raise technical questions that continue to baffle researchers today. How could the inhabitants of a small, resource-limited island move such massive statues, some over several kilometers from the quarry to their final destinations? Several theories attempt to provide answers. One of the most popular suggests that the Moai were transported on wooden sledges rolled over specially prepared paths. However, given the island's fragile ecosystem and the limited availability of large trees, a scarcity that became even more pronounced over time, this theory raises as many questions as it answers. Another, equally fascinating theory proposes that the Moai walked. Based on oral traditions from the Rapa Nui people, some researchers suggest that the statues were rocked back and forth with ropes, using their slightly curved bases to move them forward in a walking motion. Modern experiments have demonstrated that this technique is indeed possible, though it would have required tremendous skill and coordination. Beyond the logistical feats, what impresses most is the profound spiritual dimension surrounding the Moai. Each statue was unique, intended to embody the specific qualities of the ancestor it represented. Some Moai bore enormous red stone cylinders on their heads known as pakao, believed to symbolize ceremonial hairstyles or ritual headdresses, adding even more weight and complexity to the construction. The crafting of the Moai was not merely an artistic or technical endeavor. It was a sacred act, a tribute to the ancestors, and a reaffirmation of clan identity in a remote and challenging world. However, the story of Rapa Nui and its Moai is also a story of ecological and social collapse. The massive construction of statues, combined with progressive deforestation, driven by agricultural needs and the demand for transportation resources, led to severe environmental degradation. Without trees to build canoes, fishing declined dramatically. Soil erosion reduced agricultural productivity, and internal tensions between rival clans erupted into violent conflict. Archaeological evidence indicates that by the 17th century after Christ, many Moai had been deliberately toppled, likely as a result of these internecine wars. Once symbols of unity and reverence, the statues became casualties in a society on the brink of disintegration. This tragedy was compounded by European contact, which brought diseases, slavery, and exploitation, drastically reducing the Rapa Nui population and plunging the island into a prolonged period of darkness. Today, the Moai of Rapa Nui stand as silent monuments to the greatness and fragility of human civilization. Each face carved into stone, each enduring figure defying the ravages of time, speaks to a people who, against all odds, managed to create a legacy that continues to inspire awe and reverence across the world. Easter Island is far more than an open-air museum. It is a living testament to human ingenuity, spiritual devotion, and the tragedies that have shaped our shared history. To walk across the rolling meadows of Rapa Nui, to see the Moai silhouetted against the vast sky, or to hear the wind carrying ancient songs in the Rapa Nui language, is to feel a profound connection to those who dared to dream boldly, to carve their ancestors into stone, and to resist being forgotten. Thus, the giants of Easter Island continue to gaze inland, toward the souls of their people, and perhaps toward eternity itself, reminding us that even in the most remote corners of the world, the human spirit is capable of creating wonders that transcend time. The underwater temples of Yonaguni. Beneath the crystalline waters at the southwesternmost tip of the Japanese archipelago, near Yonaguni Island, where the Pacific Ocean meets the East China Sea, and where the ocean currents whisper ancient secrets to the corals and fish, lies one of the most fascinating archaeological discoveries of modern times. The underwater structures of Yonaguni, a collection of rock formations, some of monumental size, which has sparked one of the most passionate debates about the origins of human civilization. In 1986, a local diver named Kahachiro Aratake, while scouting for new diving sites to promote underwater tourism, accidentally stumbled upon what appeared to be a massive stone structure beneath the waves, featuring terraces, steps, and flat platforms arranged with striking right angles. What initially seemed like a curious natural formation soon revealed itself to be something far more intriguing, something capable of challenging the very foundations of our understanding of ancient cultures and their technological capabilities. Today known as the Yonaguni Monument, this vast structure stretches over 150 meters in length, rises up to 25 meters in height, and showcases lines, right angles, flat surfaces, and geometric shapes that appear too precise to be solely the work of natural processes. Some researchers have identified features resembling staircases, ramps, terraces, streets, and even what could be interpreted as a step pyramid, all seemingly carved from the living bedrock beneath the sea. Could it be that submerged off Yonaguni lies a man-made structure, the work of a civilization that existed thousands of years ago, long before the rise of known ancient cultures? The main proponent of this hypothesis is marine geologist Masaaki Kimura of the University of the Ryukyus, who has dedicated decades to studying the site. Kimura argues that the formations not only exhibit clear architectural patterns but also show evidence of astronomical alignments, engraved petroglyphs, and tool marks, suggesting that Yonaguni was, in fact, an ancient city submerged following a natural cataclysm, such as an earthquake or a sudden rise in sea levels. If Kimura's theory proves accurate, the structures at Yonaguni could be between 8,000 and 12,000 years old, placing them far earlier than the known civilizations of Mesopotamia or Egypt. In other words, it would require rewriting a significant chapter of human history. However, not all scientists agree with this perspective. Many geologists assert that the features observed at Yonaguni are the result of natural processes such as sedimentation, marine erosion, and tectonic activity. They argue that the predominant rock of the region, sandstone, naturally fractures along plains that produce surprisingly geometric patterns when subjected to the relentless forces of water and time. The debate between proponents of an artificial origin and advocates of a natural explanation is intense, and so far, no definitive consensus has been reached. Yet beyond the scientific controversy, the true fascination of Yonaguni lies in the questions it raises. What if a civilization older and more advanced than we have ever imagined once existed and built monuments that now rest quietly beneath the sea? Such a bold idea is not without parallels. Around the world, submerged cities and ruins have been discovered. Off the coasts of India, Cuba, and the Bahamas, silent witnesses to cultures overwhelmed by rising seas at the end of the last ice age. The Yonaguni monument could very well be part of this submerged legacy. A forgotten relic, waiting to be rediscovered, offering tantalizing glimpses into a history far richer and deeper than we dare to imagine. When observing underwater images of Yonaguni, one cannot help but feel a strange blend of wonder and melancholy. The clarity of the water reveals enormous stone slabs aligned with astonishing precision, narrow passageways, flat surfaces that could have once been ceremonial plazas, and stairways that, had they been above water, would undoubtedly evoke visions of solemn rituals and ancient processions. The imagination drifts inevitably toward lost peoples, toward civilizations that perhaps worshipped the sun and the stars, built temples to honor their gods, and ultimately watched helplessly as the ocean claimed their world. Even today, Yonaguni Island remains a place of mystery. Local inhabitants preserve ancient legends of sunken lands and ghostly cities beneath the waves. Stories passed down through generations that, far from being mere fantasy, may contain echoes of forgotten truths. Moreover, the region is notorious for its seismic activity, and it would not be implausible for a massive earthquake or tsunami to have dragged a part of the coastline into the sea, along with any structures or civilizations that once thrived there. Perhaps we will never know with absolute certainty whether Yonaguni was crafted by human hands or shaped entirely by natural forces. Yet its mere existence challenges us to rethink the boundaries of our historical knowledge. Beneath the shining blue surface, in the silent realm of the deep, the Yonaguni monument remains an enigma, a witness to distant epochs or the whimsical artistry of the earth itself. Regardless of whether it is ultimately proven to be artificial or natural, its presence invites us to look beyond the obvious, to embrace the mysteries that still await us, and to keep alive our innate drive to question, explore, and wonder. When the ocean currents gently caress the sharp edges of the stone platforms, when colorful schools of fish weave through the ancient-looking corridors, one cannot help but sense that this is a place where the lines between myth and history, between nature and culture, have forever blurred. Whether shaped by ancient hands or forged by the patience of the sea, Yonaguni endures, a silent monument reminding us that the greatest secrets of our past may still lie hidden beneath the waves, waiting for those who dare to seek them. The Fortress of Sacsayhuamán, the impossible walls of the Andes. At more than 3,500 meters above sea level, in the radiant heights of the Andean highlands, where the air is so pure it seems to vibrate with history, and where the deep blue sky stretches across valleys and mountains, stands one of the greatest enigmas of ancient architecture, the Fortress of Sacsayhuamán. Built on the outskirts of the legendary city of Cusco, the former capital of the vast Inca Empire, this construction challenges our understanding not only because of its colossal scale but also because of the astounding technical precision achieved in an age supposedly lacking advanced tools and technologies. At first glance, Sacsayhuamán impresses with its titanic walls, composed of limestone and andesite blocks that range in size from large to absolutely enormous, with some stones weighing more than 150 tons. These stones were carved and fitted together with such precision that, even today, it is impossible to insert a sheet of paper between them. No mortar was used. The perfection of the joints relies solely on the expert shaping of the stones, their massive weight, and an astonishing understanding of structural balance. The design of Sacsayhuamán does not adhere to simple straight lines or basic layouts. The walls zigzag in a serpentine pattern, creating a form that, when viewed from above, resembles a lightning bolt or the jagged teeth of a puma, an animal sacred to the Inca. Each block, with its irregular shape and many faces, was meticulously sculpted so that it fit perfectly with its neighbors, forming a three-dimensional puzzle of monumental proportions capable of withstanding not only the passage of centuries, but also the frequent and devastating earthquakes that rock the region. The precise origins of Sacsayhuamán remain a subject of intense debate. While traditional historiography attributes its construction to the Inca, particularly during the reign of Pachacuti in the 15th century after Christ, some scholars argue that the megalithic foundations could date back to a much older, possibly forgotten civilization upon which the Inca later built. This theory is supported by the striking contrast between the different architectural styles observed within the complex. While the upper sections, reconstructed by the Inca, display more regular and smaller stone blocks, the foundations exhibit a monumental scale and precision that seem difficult to explain with the techniques known to have been available at that time. How did the builders move stones of such immense size? How did they carve them with such accuracy without the use of advanced metal tools, without beasts of burden, and without even the utilitarian use of the wheel? These questions remain unanswered. Some hypotheses propose the use of earthen ramps and wooden rollers, but the sheer human effort required would have been immense, demanding thousands of workers coordinated in an extraordinary logistical endeavor that, even today, would be a formidable challenge. Accounts from early Spanish chroniclers such as Pedro Cieza de Leon and Garcilaso de la Vega describe Sacsayhuamán with awe and admiration, but do not explain how such marvels could have been achieved. Some indigenous traditions speak of mythical times when giants or ancient cultures possessed arcane knowledge that allowed them to mold stone as if it were clay. Beyond the technical aspects, Sacsayhuamán held profound symbolic and ceremonial significance. Although often described as a military fortress, its primary function appears to have been spiritual rather than martial. The layout of its walls, plazas, and towers suggests a vast ceremonial complex tied to solar rituals and the worship of Inti, the sun god, who occupied a central place in the Inca worldview. Sacsayhuamán served as the main stage for the Inti Raymi, the grand festival of the winter solstice, where thousands gathered to honor the sun and renew the sacred bonds between the people and their divine protector. The architecture of Sacsayhuamán also reveals advanced knowledge of astronomy, geology, and seismic-resistant construction techniques. The Inca, or perhaps their predecessors, understood how to design walls that not only bore the colossal weight of the stones, but also absorbed and dissipated seismic energy through the use of polygonal blocks, multi-face joints, and foundations deeply embedded into the bedrock. The strength of Sacsayhuamán lies not only in its monumental scale but also in its structural intelligence. A perfect balance of form, function, and harmony with the natural environment. Today, walking through Sacsayhuamán is an experience that stirs the soul. As one moves among its cyclopean walls, one feels a deep sense of humility in the face of such human ingenuity. Each stone seems to carry within its weight and scars the memories of entire generations. Laborers who patiently carved and positioned these stones, priests who celebrated rituals under the searing Andean sun, warriors who defended the sacred city, and peoples who, even after the fall of the empire, continued to revere this place as the living embodiment of their identity. The site is not merely an archaeological relic. It remains alive in the spirit of Cusco and in the hearts of all those who trace their lineage back to those who once walked its sacred plazas. And as the mountain winds gently brush over the stones and the morning light casts shifting shadows upon the walls, one cannot help but wonder, what secrets are still hidden beneath the massive blocks of Sacsayhuamán? Who were truly the first builders, and what ancient knowledge enabled the creation of something that even today continues to defy the ravages of time and the forces of nature? Ultimately, Sacsayhuamán stands as a living testament to the reality that human history is filled with achievements we still do not fully comprehend, an enduring invitation to admiration, to respect, and above all, to humility in the face of the greatness of our ancestors. The underground cities of Cappadocia. In the heart of Anatolia, across a vast region where the land rises in impossible shapes and the gentle undulations of rock, sculpted by millennia of wind and water, create a landscape that seems otherworldly, lies one of the most fascinating and least understood secrets of antiquity. The underground cities of Cappadocia. Amidst valleys adorned with formations known as fairy chimneys, where volcanic stone rises in whimsical columns and hidden caves preserve the footprints of vanished cultures, stretches an underground labyrinth that defies not only logic but even the boldest imagination. The region of Cappadocia, today part of Turkey, has been inhabited since time immemorial. Yet what amazes is not merely the continuous human presence, but the existence of an entire subterranean world, hand-carved into the soft volcanic stone, capable of sheltering tens of thousands of people. The most famous of these underground cities are Derinkuyu and Kemakli, but it is estimated that there are more than 200 smaller underground settlements, interconnected through secret tunnels, ventilation shafts, and ingenious defensive systems that rival any fortress built above ground. Derinkuyu, the deepest discovered so far, descends more than 60 meters below the surface and consists of at least 18 known levels, although not all are accessible today due to collapses and sedimentation, revealing a subterranean universe with living quarters, storerooms, stables, churches, kitchens, and even schools. Everything is arranged functionally and efficiently, designed to sustain a community for months, perhaps even years, isolated from the outside world. What drove these ancient peoples to undertake such a monumental task as excavating entire cities beneath the earth? Historians suggest various reasons. Some theories point to the need for refuge against constant invasions, given that Anatolia has historically been a crossroads of empires and migrations. Others believe that the cities served as religious sanctuaries, hideouts for persecuted communities, or protection against extreme climatic conditions. Whatever the original motivation, the result was the creation of a complex, self-sufficient underground environment where daily life could continue in relative safety. The planning of these cities demonstrates an astonishing level of sophistication. Ventilation shafts, some over 70 meters deep, maintained fresh air even on the deepest levels, while a network of channels provided clean water to the inhabitants. Massive circular stone doors, some over 3 meters in diameter, could be rolled into place to block passageways swiftly in case of attack. Each corridor was narrow, forcing intruders to move forward one at a time, while defenders could use trapdoors, false passages, and passive defense systems to protect themselves. Moreover, communal spaces such as meeting halls and chapels reveal that social, spiritual, and administrative life continued even underground. The layout of the levels appears to follow a logical order. Livestock areas and storerooms on the upper floors, residential spaces in the middle, and sacred spaces like chapels and schools located deeper down, perhaps as a symbolic descent into the heart of knowledge and spirituality. Although most of the known underground cities of Cappadocia date in their current form to the early centuries after Christ, particularly the Byzantine and early Christian periods, it is likely that their deepest sections trace back much further, possibly to the Hittite era or even earlier. What is even more fascinating is that although the building material, primarily soft volcanic tuff, is relatively easy to excavate, maintaining structural stability across such vast and deep complexes without collapse required an advanced knowledge of engineering for its time. The atmosphere inside these cities remains overwhelming even today. The temperature stays cool and constant. The echoes of footsteps dissolve into the serpentine corridors, and an almost reverential silence envelopes anyone venturing into the depths. Every chamber, staircase, and tunnel seems to whisper fragments of past lives. The murmuring of prayers recited in hidden chapels, the faint laughter of children playing in underground courtyards, the muffled sound of tools chiseling stone in the shadows. Beyond the technical marvel, Cappadocia's underground cities feed myths and legends that endure to this day. Some local tales speak of giants or ancient beings who carved the tunnels to escape impending cataclysms or supernatural threats. Others suggest that during the endless medieval wars, these vast networks served as safe havens against invading armies roaming Anatolia. Regardless of the origin of these stories, the sheer immensity and complexity of Cappadocia's subterranean world remain a timeless testament to human ingenuity. Thanks to conservation efforts and a growing fascination with archaeological tourism, several of these cities have been partially restored and opened to the public. However, much of their full extent remains undiscovered, buried under centuries of sediment and awaiting future exploration. Walking through the tunnels of Dwarka or Göbekli today is far more than an archaeological visit. It is an immersion into the resilience of humanity, into the ancestral ability to adapt, to survive against extreme adversity, and to create spaces where life could flourish even under constant threat from the outside world. The underground cities of Cappadocia teach us that greatness is not always built toward the sky. Sometimes, the most profound expressions of human spirit are carved into the depths of the earth, in silent hidden cities that tell stories of survival, faith, and the eternal quest for a safe home. And so, beneath the golden sun illuminating Anatolia's valleys and within the cool shadows of sculpted stone, these forgotten cities continue to whisper their story. A story of courage, ingenuity, and a hope that has never truly vanished. The Sajama Geoglyphs in Bolivia. Across the vast plains of the Bolivian Altiplano, where the land stretches endlessly toward the infinite sky and where cold winds sweep through a barren, timeless landscape, one of the most enigmatic legacies of ancient civilizations lies hidden: the Sajama Geoglyphs. There, beneath the imposing shadow of Mount Sajama, the highest peak in Bolivia, a gigantic network of lines and shapes unfolds, a colossal geometric pattern whose magnitude and meaning continue to challenge modern understanding. At first glance, the Sajama geoglyphs could easily go unnoticed, lost in the apparent monotony of the landscape. But when viewed from the air, an astonishing network of straight lines emerges, crisscrossing, weaving, and stretching across hundreds of square kilometers, forming one of the largest and oldest geoglyph systems in the world, and paradoxically, one of the least studied. These lines, etched into the Earth's surface by removing the darker top layer to expose the lighter soil beneath, inevitably evoke comparisons to the famous Nazca lines in Peru. However, unlike Nazca, where the figures mainly depict animals and anthropomorphic forms, the lines of Sajama are predominantly geometric. Endless straight paths linking strategic points across the landscape, invisible trails that vanish into the horizon. Who created this immense labyrinth, and for what purpose? As with so many archaeological mysteries, the answer remains elusive and fascinating. It is believed that the lines were created by the pre-Columbian peoples of the Altiplano, such as the Aymara and other ancestral groups, more than 3,000 years ago. Some theories suggest that they were sacred pathways, used for processions, pilgrimages, or rituals intended to connect the people with the forces of nature and the cosmos. Other researchers propose that the lines formed a kind of ceremonial map, a symbolic representation of the territory and its spiritual energies, in which each line connected sacred places such as mountains, lagoons, or ritual sites known as huacas. What is certain is that the Sajama lines were not random markings or simple decorations. Their layout reveals an impressive level of planning and precision. The lines maintain astonishing straightness over many kilometers, seemingly indifferent to minor geographical obstacles such as hills or small ravines, suggesting a profound understanding of geometry, orientation, and topography by their ancient builders. The technique used to create them is also remarkable. Dark stones and surface layers were carefully removed to expose the lighter soil beneath, creating a sharp contrast. The lines vary in width from about 1 to 3 meters, and their visibility depends largely on lighting conditions and the observer's vantage point. From the air, the true scope of the designs becomes apparent. Inevitably, one wonders how these ancient peoples managed to maintain such perfect alignments across vast distances. Did they use astronomical references, lines of people marking routes, or perhaps an intuitive spatial awareness that modern humanity has lost? The Andean culture, deeply connected to natural cycles and celestial movements, offers some clues. It is known that the peoples of the Altiplano worshipped the sun, the moon, the stars, and the mountains, and that their ritual lives were governed by complex astronomical calendars. The Sajama lines could thus be terrestrial manifestations of cosmic relationships, sacred pathways mirroring the heavens upon the earth. Ironically, the extreme conditions of the Altiplano, isolation, dryness, scarce vegetation, may have helped preserve the lines for millennia. The lack of agricultural development or major modern infrastructure allowed these ancient markings to remain nearly intact, lying dormant under vast skies and ancestral winds until their rediscovery in the 20th century through aerial photography. Despite their significance, the Sajama geoglyphs have received little scientific attention. The absence of systematic studies and protective measures leaves this cultural heritage vulnerable to neglect, unregulated tourism, and the impacts of climate change. Yet the Sajama geoglyphs still possess a unique power to inspire awe. Flying over the Altiplano and observing the lines stretch out like ancient veins across the skin of the earth is an experience that reshapes one's perception of landscape and time. Each line seems to whisper stories, tales of peoples who expressed their connection to the world not with towering monuments but through subtle gestures etched into the ground, visible only to those willing to look from a different perspective. Local legends tell of ancestral spirits who walked these lines in endless pilgrimages, imprinting their routes upon the land. Other, more recent theories suggest the lines could hold hidden messages or be maps of forgotten knowledge. Whether myth or reality, these stories reveal the enduring fascination that this mysterious network exerts on the human imagination. Walking among the Sajama lines is like walking between worlds. Each step across the dusty surface is a journey back into a time when thousands of years could pass like a single breath, and when the dreams of the ancients still traced pathways beneath the cosmic sky. Here, one feels the magnitude of a civilization that knew how to leave its mark, not through grandiose monuments but through silent, enduring traces woven into the fabric of the earth. Thus, the Sajama geoglyphs continue to stretch their silent threads across the vastness of the Altiplano, reminding us that true greatness is often found not in grandiosity, but in humble, lasting gestures, lines drawn across the endless landscape, transcending both time and space. A legacy that waits patiently in the cold winds to be rediscovered, not only by scientists but by all those who still know how to look with wonder. The tomb of King Pakal and his astronaut, deep within the dense jungle of Chiapas, where centuries-old trees intertwine into vaulted ceilings of green, and where sunlight filters only timidly through the thick canopy, rises one of the most iconic and enigmatic sights of the ancient world, Palenque. There, hidden within the constant whisper of leaves and the murmuring of crystalline streams, stands the Temple of the Inscriptions, a majestic stone building that guards a secret which has fascinated archaeologists, historians, and dreamers alike. The tomb of King Pakal, and with it, the mysterious relief that some have called the Astronaut of Palenque. In the 7th century after Christ, Kinich Jenab Pakal, known to us as Pakal the Great, ruled wisely and powerfully over the city-state of Palenque, at the heart of Maya civilization. His reign, which lasted almost 70 years, marked a golden age of architectural splendor, artistic brilliance, and cultural refinement that left an indelible mark on the history of pre-Columbian America. However, it would be not only his life but also his death that would elevate Pakal to the status of legend. Beneath the Temple of the Inscriptions, hidden behind a complex system of traps and secret passageways, lay a monumental crypt, unique among Maya cities, which remained untouched for centuries, protected by the jungle and by the oblivion of time. It was only in 1952 that the Mexican archaeologist Alberto Ruz Luwilier, after years of meticulous excavation, uncovered a concealed stone slab that led to a steep staircase descending into the heart of the temple, into a burial chamber whose magnificence still leaves visitors breathless. At the center of the crypt, atop a massive sarcophagus of limestone, rested a carved stone slab bearing one of the most fascinating images in all Mesoamerican art. A depiction of Pakal seemingly floating, surrounded by symbols and motifs that, in the eyes of some modern observers, resembled an astronaut piloting a spacecraft. The figure of Pakal appears reclined, knees bent, feet resting on a kind of platform. His hands seem to be manipulating a complex device, while tubes and intricate designs swirl around his body. Above him rises a stylized tree, while below, the gaping jaws of an infernal creature open wide. This relief, crafted with exquisite skill and deep symbolism, has been interpreted traditionally by Mayanists as representing the cycles of life, death, and rebirth, central themes of the Maya worldview. The tree growing from Pakal's body would be the Wakachan, the cosmic tree, linking the underworld, the earth, and the heavens. The monster below would symbolize the entrance to Xibalba, the Maya underworld, while Pakal's posture would illustrate his transformation into a divine being. However, during the 1960s, a radically different interpretation emerged, capturing the imagination of the public and fueling bold speculation. Swiss writer Erich von Däniken, in his book Chariots of the Gods, proposed that the image was not merely symbolic but a literal representation of extraterrestrial contact. According to his theory, Pakal was piloting a spacecraft. His reclined posture reflected that of an astronaut at launch. The tubes around him represented a life support system. The platforms were navigational controls, and the flames depicted beneath him were exhaust gases from a rocket engine. Although this theory was largely dismissed by the academic community, it resonated deeply with popular culture, helping to ignite a widespread fascination with the idea of ancient astronauts influencing early civilizations. Regardless of alternative theories, Pakal's tomb remains an awe-inspiring testament to Maya civilization. The sarcophagus, monumental in size, was accompanied by a host of offerings. Intricately crafted jade jewelry, funerary masks, and walls inscribed with glyphs recounting Pakal's divine ancestry, legitimizing his rule as ordained by the gods. The famous jade funerary mask of Pakal, assembled with meticulous perfection, not only showcases the Mayas' extraordinary artisanal skill, but also their profound understanding of death as a passage into a superior spiritual existence. The Temple of the Inscriptions itself, with its 9 ascending levels, symbolically reproduces the 9 levels of the Maya underworld. Every stone, every carved glyph, every relief appears to be part of a vast stone codex, a mystical narrative designed not only to honor the dead, but also to instruct future generations about the cosmic order and the soul's journey toward transcendence. Today, Pakal's tomb is considered one of the greatest archaeological treasures of Mesoamerica. Its discovery revolutionized the study of the Maya, revealing a complexity in their funerary architecture previously unimagined. To enter the Temple of the Inscriptions and descend its hidden staircase is to cross a threshold between worlds. The dampness of the stones, the earthy scent of stillness, and the soft whisper of the wind filtering through the dark corridors all conspire to immerse the visitor in an atmosphere of sacred mystery. Standing before Pakal's sarcophagus, under the silent gaze of centuries steeped in intertwined history and myth, it becomes impossible not to feel wonder. Was Pakal truly a cosmic traveler, as some dreamers believe? Or was he simply a great king whose vision of life, death, and the afterlife still speaks to us across the centuries? Perhaps, as so often happens, the answer lies hidden within the symbolic language of the ancient Maya, a language that, like Pakal himself, floats between the worlds of the living and the realms of dreams. The enigma of the Longyou caves. In the heart of China's Zhejiang province, nestled between centuries-old rice fields and rolling hills blanketed in endless greenery, lies one of the most surprising and least understood discoveries of modern archaeology. The Longyou Caves, an ensemble of man-made caves carved with astonishing precision into solid rock, appearing as if the earth itself had been sculpted to convey a mysterious message from an ancient past. The discovery of the Longyou Caves in 1992 was not the result of a planned archaeological expedition or a search inspired by ancient maps or legends. Instead, it arose from the curiosity and practical needs of local farmers who, intrigued by tales of bottomless ponds, decided to drain one of the many water basins in their village, hoping to find fish or gain additional farmland. Yet what they uncovered far exceeded their expectations. After weeks of pumping millions of liters of water, they revealed the entrance to a monumental cavern, meticulously carved into solid sandstone, with smooth walls, ceilings adorned with geometric parallel markings, and gigantic pillars that seemed capable of supporting the weight of the world. This first discovery was not isolated. Soon it became clear that the initial cave was part of a vast complex of over 20 interconnected chambers, all displaying a remarkable degree of uniformity and detail. Each cave features monumental dimensions. Some rise to heights of over 30 meters and stretch across thousands of square meters, all painstakingly excavated from solid rock, a feat made even more impressive when considering the tools and techniques presumed to have been available at the time. Inevitably, the question arises, how? How could an ancient civilization, lacking modern machinery, remove such a massive volume of rock, polish the surfaces to near perfection, and adorn walls and ceilings with consistent, deliberate patterns, all without leaving behind chaotic tool marks or signs of haphazard work? Given the absence of historical records mentioning these structures, the exact dating of the Longyou caves remains uncertain. Conservative estimates suggest they could be at least 2,000 years old, possibly dating back to the Qin dynasty or even earlier, although no definitive evidence has yet been found to confirm this. What makes the mystery even deeper is the apparent lack of practical use. Despite their enormous size and the effort required to create them, the caves show no signs of having been used as dwellings, military fortifications, or storage spaces. There are no inscriptions, no murals, no religious artifacts that would suggest a clear ritual purpose. Were they designed as shelters against natural disasters? Were they massive religious monuments dedicated to a forgotten deity? Or perhaps social or political gathering spaces whose memory has long since faded into oblivion? Each cave possesses unique features. Some contain platforms and stairways leading to elevated sections, while others present corridors inviting exploration into still unknown sectors. The persistent pattern of parallel lines etched into the surfaces suggests that the builders were guided not merely by practical concerns but also by a strong aesthetic or symbolic vision, one that, although lost to us today, must have held profound meaning for its creators. From a technical perspective, the construction of these vast spaces would have required not only a tremendous quantity of labor but also sophisticated planning and engineering skills. Modern estimates suggest that at least 1 million cubic meters of rock would have had to be removed, a feat that would have posed enormous logistical challenges to any ancient society. And yet, one of the most puzzling aspects remains: where did all the extracted material go? In the surrounding areas, there are no signs of debris piles, no evidence of quarries, and no deposits that would account for the missing rock. This absence has led some researchers to propose even more speculative theories. Could the builders have used forgotten techniques to soften or dissolve the rock? Did they possess knowledge of materials manipulation that has been entirely lost over the centuries? Like the great mysteries of other ancient monuments, the Egyptian pyramids, the megaliths of Puma Punku, the Longyou caves seem to hint at forgotten chapters of human ingenuity, suggesting that ancient civilizations might have possessed technological or organizational capacities far beyond what we currently attribute to them. Despite modern efforts at mapping and exploration, much of the complex remains unexamined. It is suspected that many more chambers lie hidden beneath the surface, awaiting discovery. Yet exploration carries great risks. Without a full understanding of their internal structures, any careless excavation could cause catastrophic collapses, destroying these irreplaceable treasures. Inside the caves, the atmosphere is almost tangible. A profound, enveloping silence reigns, a silence so deep that one's own footsteps are instantly absorbed by the smooth stone surfaces, as if the caves themselves were determined to keep their secrets locked away. The subdued lighting, playing over the carved shapes and accentuating the vastness of the spaces, creates an ambience of timeless mystery. In this hushed environment, it is impossible not to imagine the anonymous artisans who, day after day, chiseling patiently by hand, shaped these colossal spaces, driven perhaps by a vision or belief whose true meaning may be forever beyond our grasp. Perhaps the Longyou caves were not merely utilitarian shelters or temples, but were also monuments to perseverance, faith, and a grand vision, a silent testament to humanity's ability to mold the world according to its dreams and ambitions, even if their purpose remains obscure to later generations. Thus, beneath the fertile soils of Zhejiang, deep within the earth where history fades into myth, the Longyou caves continue their silent vigil. They remain timeless witnesses to a forgotten era, reminding us that there are still questions for which we have no answers. Mysteries that lie hidden, patiently waiting to challenge the limits of our understanding. The Aztec Sun Stone, at the heart of one of the most powerful and complex civilizations of Mesoamerica, between temples that seem to touch the sky and plazas where massive ceremonies took place, stands one of the most iconic and enigmatic monuments of ancient Mexican culture. The Sun Stone, commonly known as the Aztec calendar, a colossal monolith that, through its symbols and finely crafted reliefs, has withstood the test of time and continues to tell stories of gods, cosmic cycles, and visions of the world's fate. Carved from olivine basalt, an extremely hard volcanic rock, this massive stone measures nearly 3.5 meters in diameter, is over a meter thick, and weighs more than 24 tons. Its sheer size is impressive, but it is the richness of its iconography and the depth of its meanings that make the Sun Stone a true mirror of the worldview in which the universe was understood as a dynamic spectacle of eternal creation, destruction, and renewal. Paradoxically, the modern history of the Sun Stone begins with its being forgotten. After the conquest of Tenochtitlan in the 16th century, the once magnificent Mexico City was razed to make way for the new colonial capital, Mexico City. In this process of destruction and reconstruction, the Sun Stone was likely deliberately buried, possibly as a symbolic act of submission of the old gods. It wasn't until the late 18th century, during construction work in the city's main square, that the enormous monolith was accidentally rediscovered, unearthed, and mounted on a wall of the Mexico City Cathedral, where it remained for years as a nearly incidental part of the urban landscape. Only in the 20th century, with its relocation to the National Museum of Anthropology, did the true appreciation of the Sun Stone begin, recognizing it as one of the most significant archaeological treasures of the Americas. But what exactly is the Sun Stone? Is it, as its popular name suggests, a calendar? A sacrificial altar? A mythical compendium of creation and destruction? The answer is as complex as the stone itself. At the center of the monolith, framed by a square radiating energy in all directions, sits the face of a powerful being, commonly identified as Tonatiuh, the sun god. His expression is stern, his gaze piercing, and his tongue, depicted as an obsidian blade, symbolizes the sun's eternal hunger for human blood, necessary to continue its journey across the sky. Surrounding Tonatiuh are 4 squares representing the previous suns, ages that, according to Mexican mythology, preceded the current world. Each of these ages ended in catastrophe, devoured by jaguars, destroyed by hurricanes, burned by fiery rain, or submerged in massive floods. Our present world, the 5th sun, is also destined to end, albeit in a different way. Beyond this, the stone unfolds a complex network of astronomical, calendrical, and ritual symbols. An outer ring displays the 20 signs of the Tanalp Wali, a sacred 260-day calendar that governed religious, political, and social life among the Mexica. Even farther out, fire serpents, representations of time itself, coil around the entire piece, accompanied by gods and glyphs that reinforce the image of a constantly shifting universe. The complexity of the Sunstone is not limited to its symbols. Its function also remains a subject of intense academic debate. Some believe it served as a sacrificial altar, given that sun worship and the need to feed the sun with blood were central to Mexican religion. Others see it as a precise astronomical instrument used to determine solstices, equinoxes, and other celestial events, and to organize the agricultural and ritual calendar. Whatever its exact function, the Sunstone is undoubtedly a comprehensive representation of a cyclical view of time, an endless sequence of creation and destruction, where human beings are not mere observers but active participants in maintaining cosmic balance. The effort required to design, carve, and move such a monument speaks to a high degree of social organization, technical mastery, and ideological power. One can vividly imagine how stonemasons, perhaps under the guidance of priest astronomers, used the simplest of tools and infinite patience to carve the fine glyphs into the hard basalt, each cut and line part of a ritual act, a conscious connection between heaven and earth, between gods and humans. Today, when you stand before the Sunstone in all its magnificence at the National Museum of Anthropology, it is difficult not to be awestruck. Before its majestic reliefs, which still seem to vibrate with ancient cosmic energy, you are not just facing a work of art or an archaeological artifact, but an open window into a worldview that, though expressed in unfamiliar forms and symbols, is deeply rooted in our own human longing for meaning and order in the universe. The Sunstone reminds us that past civilizations are not mere dead chapters of history, but living testimonies of imagination, willpower, and spiritual pursuit. voices that still echo today, centuries later, carved into stone. The submerged city of Dwarka, along the western coast of India, where the relentless waves of the Arabian Sea break rhythmically against the shores of Gujarat, and where the warm breeze carries ancient grains of sand across the landscape, there exists an ancient legend passed down through countless generations, a sacred whisper in the ears of those who live by the sea. It tells of a magnificent city, built not merely of stone and mortar but adorned with gold, silver, and precious jewels. A city said to have been founded not by any mortal king but by a divine figure revered to this day by millions. Krishna, the hero and god of the Hindu pantheon. The name of that city was Dwarka. For centuries, Dwarka existed only in the epic verses of the Mahabharata, one of the oldest and most intricate sacred texts in human history. It was described as a place of unparalleled splendor, a city built by celestial hands, radiant beyond all human imagination. According to legend, Krishna left Mathura to establish Dwarka as his new kingdom, seeking to protect his people from endless wars. Tales spoke of more than 900,000 palaces, their walls gleaming with precious metals, their paths woven through floating bridges, all suffused with a brilliance no earthly city could ever rival. For generations, these stories were seen as poetic allegories, weaving together the divine and the human, rather than accounts of actual historical events. Yet by the end of the 20th century, underwater archaeological expeditions began to reveal something astounding off the modern coast of Dwarka, challenging the boundary between myth and history. What at first glance appeared to be nothing more than natural rock formations gradually revealed itself, upon closer inspection, to be an arrangement too precise, too geometrical, to have been shaped by the capricious hands of nature alone. Rectangular patterns, vast stone walls, platforms, steps, and intricately carved blocks. In 1983, the National Institute of Oceanography of India, collaborating with archaeologists and experienced divers, launched a systematic exploration of the seabed. What they found, at depths of 20 to 30 meters, shook many established assumptions. Evidence of what could be a sunken city, paved streets, remnants of massive walls, staircases, pillars, and artifacts that seemed far older than conventional history would allow. Some carbon-dated organic samples taken near the structures suggested an age of up to 9,000 years, implying that this city could have existed at a time when the pyramids of Egypt had not yet been conceived and Mesopotamian cities were only emerging from prehistory. The notion of a real Dwarka, a flourishing harbor city thriving in an age long before our accepted timeline of human civilization, began to take hold. Media outlets worldwide picked up the story, and for many, especially among the Hindu community, the findings were not a surprise but a confirmation of what sacred texts had long proclaimed. That Dwarka was no myth, but a forgotten reality waiting patiently beneath the waves. Proponents of this interpretation see in the underwater remains tangible evidence of a highly developed civilization, one that possessed knowledge of architecture, urban planning, and maritime trade thousands of years before traditional history acknowledges such capabilities. To them, Dwarka is not merely an archaeological curiosity. It is a key that could unlock a profound re-examination of the early history of India and perhaps the world. Yet, predictably, not all scholars agree. Skeptical archaeologists argue that the underwater structures could be remnants of more recent settlements destroyed by seismic activity or coastal erosion. Others question the reliability of the dating methods and stress that a fuller stratigraphic context is needed before drawing sweeping conclusions. Even so, the possibility that the Arabian Sea hides the ruins of a forgotten chapter of humanity remains tantalizing. For beyond the realm of empirical evidence, Dwarka represents something deeper. It embodies the mysterious intersection where mythology and archaeology meet, where sacred tales and stone structures converge, where the lines between divine narrative and historical reality blur. The very possibility that Krishna, one of the most beloved avatars of Hindu belief, could have once walked through a vibrant city whose ruins still lie hidden beneath the sea imbues the search for Dwarka with an almost spiritual significance. Standing today on the shores near modern Dwarka, gazing out across the endless waters, it is hard to imagine that beneath the gentle waves might lie the remains of a civilization so ancient, so luminous, that it inspired the poetry of the Mahabharata. Yet for the local fishermen, the sea is more than a livelihood. It is a living repository of memory. Among them, tales persist of mysterious lights flickering beneath the surface, of strange songs rising from the depths on quiet nights. For these coastal communities, Dwarka was never lost. It merely transitioned into another realm, slipping quietly from mortal sight but never from collective memory. Underwater exploration continues, though it faces enormous challenges. Technical difficulties, bureaucratic entanglements, and the sheer unpredictability of the ocean itself. Each dive is a delicate dance between discovery and preservation, for the structures below are fragile, easily damaged by the slightest carelessness. Nevertheless, the artifacts recovered so far, ceramic shards, stone anchors, carved rocks bearing symbolic motifs, suggest a place of considerable human activity, a place once bustling with life and culture. It is possible that Dwarka was submerged as a result of rising sea levels triggered by climatic changes at the end of the last ice age. It is equally possible that it was part of a greater maritime network, a node in a civilization whose memory faded even as its stones sank into the sea. Perhaps, in the Mahabharata's vivid verses, we find not mere myth but a distant echo of a very real cataclysm, poetically preserved by a people who understood that memory itself is sacred. Whether historical fact or mythic archetype, Dwarka remains an emblem of humanity's endless quest to connect with its forgotten past. It teaches us that what lies hidden beneath the waves may be just as alive as what stands on land, and that memory, faith, and imagination can preserve cities long after their walls have fallen. Dwarka invites us to dive not only into the waters of the Arabian Sea, but into the deepest recesses of human wonder, to believe, even if only for a moment, that lost worlds still wait for those with eyes to see and hearts to understand. And so, our journey through the great mysteries comes to an end. For now, if you want to keep exploring the world's secrets with me, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and tell me in the comments which mystery made you wonder the most. Your voice is part of this adventure. See you there.